No, you're not looking at the moon. It's the headset that I'm wearing because it's now 11 o'clock at night on the 21st of June. So that's a perfect reminder to wish you all a beautiful summer solstice. I'm going to turn this light off now because it serves no purpose. But the visual you can put with this, which you'll automatically do if you listen to anything, your mind, or if you read something, your mind will start creating pictures and things. I earlier on today listened to the latest Archaix presentation with Grindel Dark on the uncovering or the sort of discovery of something that's really mind-blowing, but at the same time it's not a surprise. Now, I don't know how many of you have had experienced this, but the only way I can describe in the moment is I know I'm onto something. I can smell it, I can feel it, but I can't quite put my finger on it. And it's to do with this presentation, where it's shown that the likes of Mozart basically composed music with a roll of two dice. Well, in most games, you need a pair of sixes to start the game. So you need a pair of dice. So a pair of dice, if you start playing with what you're hearing there, it's so similar in sound to Paradise. I wish I could have the time and the patience to go back over my old YouTube channel and pull up all the videos that are relevant, that things I'm going to be saying here that I've already said. But I feel it's better to just say it anew, because there's more to this. I'm going to have to go to a backstory first off. This is a personal one. When I researched family history over probably about a 15-year period, it was always intuition-led, backed up with a paper trail afterwards, never the other way round. That seemed to be, and I was aware of it at the time, that this is a test. This is like a training period for something better. I feel it was to sharpen to listening to that intuitive feeling and following that. Because I could get a sort of like a voice that said, go into that second-hand bookshop. And then almost like some invisible force was guiding me to a particular bookshelf, and like a voice was saying, that's the book you want. That's the book to look into. And then just following hunches on which parish do I look into now to look for baptisms, marriages and burials, and then start tracing the families of the spouse, the female spouse in the marriage, taking their surname and who was this woman's parents and so on. So it was just following an intuitive guidance. So I've got a lot of bits and pieces that I can bring to the table to do with this subject of music. But we need to go back, first of all, to ask the question, well, what is music? Well, music is an art. So if we take that word art, now you've heard it in the Lord's Prayer, Our Father who art in heaven. And as I've shown on video, it's missing those pauses for it to make sense that it's a statement, a question and an answer all in one. It's our Father. There's the statement. Who? There's the question. Our Father who art in heaven. The imagination. Now, I'm not recoiling in horror that, no, you've shattered my belief in, and it's almost pedestalizing these great composers. I feel there's more to it, that there is, how can I liken this? Let's take, I've drawn an illustration for a tarot card. Now I apply a meaning to what that card represents. So in doing a tarot card reading, I'm reading an energy or something that's creative that's been put into that artist who's drawn that card when I'm reading tarot cards. It's conveying a feeling that has been put in by the artist because they've put heart and soul into what they've created. There's an energetic locking in of something in that illustration, and it works exactly the same way with music. Now, if we turn now to the printed score, what you'll have is generally a treble clef. There'll be 5 lines with obviously 4 spaces in between. Then there'll be a gap, and then with a bass clef, there'll be 5 lines with 4 spaces in between. Now, between those 2 staves, it's called the great stave. Now, music is played it has a time signature. It's linear. So it's read linear and also vertically in the case of a pianist. This is the thing I'd find hardest about trying to read music, because you're having to read for the left hand and the right hand at the same time. So you're reading vertically as well as reading from left to right. But if we take this great stave and we turn it a quarter turn, so it's now 2 sets of 5 vertical lines. Between those 2 sets of lines, there is an invisible line which is called middle C in the treble clef, which I feel alludes to something to do with the mind's eye. Now, something else to keep in mind here. So you've got 2 groups of 5 lines for the treble clef and the bass clef. And this 11th line, this invisible line between the 2. I feel there is something in that, because what is the origin of the written music? Because the story that I've read several times and seen things on YouTube, that before Greece, it wasn't written down, or what was written down hasn't survived. For whatever reason. Maybe a reset, maybe just the knowledge wasn't passed on, who knows. That would take us off on a tangent of speculation. There's no point going there. Suffice to say, we've got this great stave. Now, if you look for the treble clef symbol, those of you that are musicians will be familiar with it. Now, bringing in someone who's studied Reiki and is a Reiki practitioner, I'm sure you can see in that treble clef the similarity to a hand gesture used in Reiki. Now, for the rest of you, study that picture of the treble clef. Now imagine, point your finger out as if you're going to dip it into like black paint, and you're going to draw that symbol. Or if you don't fancy getting your finger wet, just picture doing this, or actually do it if you really want to. Or you get a very long paintbrush and you have that black paint on the end, and you're now going to trace and draw out that treble clef. it may be worth doing as an exercise, but I'm sure you can picture this from looking at that picture and the motions you'd have to go through. So imagine the paintbrush is not a paintbrush, but a wand. Does that not look like it's some sort of hand gesture with a wand that's casting a spell with that treble clef symbol? Now, if we turn to the bass clef symbol, would you agree that it looks very similar or alludes to the shape of the golden spiral? And you've also got those two dots with it to the right, which I would suggest is something to do with sight. Now, on a printed score, the next thing you'll have, if I remember correctly, is the time signature. Actually, that may come later. It may be the order of sharps and flats, which will indicate which key that music is in. Now, it's interesting that the words we have keys in music. We have tones. We have the great stave. We have middle C. We have 7 notes, A to G, which seems to correspond to the 7 chakra system. So A you could take as representing the root, the G as representing the crown chakra. Whichever way you run the likening of the chakras to either starting with A or starting with G, which either way you do it, D is always in the middle, which is the heart. That would be like the equivalent of green. Now, I'm not a musicologist. I can't read music. I can follow to a certain level if there's a score sheet with a piece of music. Not all the time. Sometimes I do get lost in it. But generally, I can follow maybe the flute part if it's an orchestral score, or I can follow the violins. I'm not able to read vertically and follow them all at the same time, but it gives me an idea. And what you will see in the printed scores, there are definitely patterns with the quavers and semi-quavers and so on. It's interesting as well, the actual symbols for musical notes. Again, it's almost like a stroke of a wand. I'm not saying it is, but I'm just the general feeling I've got about this. But there's something I'm missing from the middle of all of this that I'm not quite getting. So I'm inviting you to help get your thinking caps on, as it were. What are you seeing, hearing, feeling in music? Specifically with classical music here. There are definite patterns with the lifespans of composers and their composing spans with isometric markers, palindromic sequences. I've only skimmed the surface on this, but there's definitely something to this. Now, the name Mozart, just look up what his name actually is. You can look on the Wikipedia entry for it. It's not changed from before the days of computers, because I've actually seen it printed in a book, which was the New Grove Dictionary of Music and Musicians, which is about 20 volumes. I wish I had a set of those books, because they are rather good. It gives you the history of the bassoon, for example, or like a general overview of a particular composer's life and a sort of short list of their compositions. So where else do we want to go with this? So art. Of all the arts, music is the one that requires living beings to bring it to life. It's unique amongst the arts for this, and what it conveys, I would recommend listening inwardly. What I mean by that is when you hear something that you feel something physically in your body, just contemplate where in the body you're feeling it. And then if you are able to determine maybe the key or the actual note that is played. But also don't forget with music, for there to be notes, what are equally important are the spaces between the notes to separate the notes. And to go off on a slight tangent here, referring back to what Alan Watts talked about, whatever sound you make, and I think he used the sound le. And if you say it over and over, how whatever the word or sound is, it becomes ridiculous. So le, la, 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 la. it loses all meaning. So there's something in the shifting in the music to keep things flowing, because it can't stay just on one single tone. To bring in a bit of Rudolf Steiner, he talks about this with spiritual development, that currently music is expressed and understood in fifths, but it can shift to having an understanding in fourths or thirds. Like I say, I'm not a musicologist, I can't expand on that, but I get the general feeling of what is being conveyed with that. There is definitely something, I would say it's something benevolent that is encoding, working through art, because if our Father, who art in heaven, is that benevolent factor, it would make sense that it would convey through art, through the artist. God created man in his image. Man creates God in his image, as it were, you could say as well. Well, that's manifested as what is created, be it a painting, a sculpture, music, whatever you class as arts, because there's no common agreement on that. Anyway, going back, while I think of it, to the great stave, you've got an 11 there. Now, 11 is a highly significant number when you also consider it is composed of 4 and 7. There is something about the sequence 1, 4, and 7 that is equal to the 3, 6, and 9, but that also means there's a middle path of 2, 5, and 8. There's numeric codes and things in music for definite. I would love to go much deeper in this in a presentation. What are we up to so far? 18 minutes. It's getting a bit too long because I've got to think about the uploading. Hopefully this makes sense to some of you at least. But yeah, the name Mozart, he lived for 35 years. There's a big question mark over his death. There's a lot written about his tie-up with Masonic lodges and writing Masonic music. But then just think about that, Masonic. It's got the word sonic. It's to do with sound. I wonder how many people ever consider that, just the word Masonic. Again, it's play with it, split things up. It's almost implying the MA is something to do with magnetism, and sonic is the sound, the way it's the medium that it uses. Because music can be hypnotic, it can be uplifting, it can put you into depression. Music is very much about mood, it's very much about emotion. And like everything else, if there is a group that has a sort of hidden knowledge that is not being shared equally with humanity, that there will be ways to use music in certain ways, because it's basically a frequency that we decode as it comes into our ears, it's sound vibrations, disturbance of the ether, and then the brain will recode it, as it were, and you'll hear a symphony or whatever it happens to be. There's so much to this topic. It's a job to know where to go with this. But anyway, yes, Mozart, the most Christ-like, the most perfect of composers, as given in a sort of testimony which I assume has some basis of fact in the film Amadeus, where Salieri describes seeing this composition of Mozart. It's called the Grand Partita. It's Serenade Number 10. And he describes it. It sounds like a rusty old squeeze box, and then this voice from heaven comes through, played on the clarinet or the oboe. I forget now. But another composer could clearly read the music, and this look on this actor's face who plays Salieri, his facial expressions are so beautiful in what he puts across in that is a sort of high point of an otherwise what I think is quite a dreadful film. I've just got to pause this and feed Junus. Junie Boos, hang on. This is still recording. Right. That's Junus now been fed. I forgot where I've got to now. We're already up to 21 minutes for this. Maybe I've said enough already so far, but this is definitely a whole video series leading on to this. I will give you all that I've got from my own investigations and things, and put that on the table, as it were. And I invite any of you to sort of, let's try and find that bit in the middle, because there is definitely something in this. I just feel it. That's the only way I can describe it. It's such a strong, intense feeling that definitely onto something here, but I've got that feeling I'm missing something. It's almost like having a cataract over the spiritual eye. It's like I can see the periphery of it, but the actual middle part. But maybe this is a thing. It's like, what is the origin of music? It's one of these things that seems to have suddenly appeared fully formed, with no backstory. Or maybe there is a backstory that has been hidden away. It was something Jason talked about these metal discs, and theorizing that they may be like a more recent metal disc, which was like an early form of vinyl. You could also get these piano rolls where the pianist would actually play a piece of music and it would puncture a hole. So it's almost like Braille in a way. While I think of it as well, I'm pretty sure it's a channel called Music Machine. You can see not printed scores of music, but given in a different way, in that it's almost like Morse code, and as the music plays you get different colors and you get these shapes. And I would recommend listening to or watching the visual that goes with Bach's Toccata and Fugue, because you can see clear patterns and things with that. I mentioned that one because it's one I return to every now and again because I find it so fascinating. It's like, oh, here's a way I can understand and read music, as it were, to some degree. It just helps with my understanding of a subject where I can't read music. That's one thing I wish I did have the ability to do. But clearly there's so much that comes into this: the etymology, the numerology, So there will be more videos on this topic, and just to finish off this video, just a reminder, it's almost like applying the same blueprint, the same principle with tarot card reading, and I offer individual personalized tarot card readings. In some ways, my fascination in and sort of following my sort of bliss, as it were, in looking into music, because I do find so much fascination with it. It's flying blind, and that's the same with tarot card readings. I don't require any information, because that can colour the way I give the interpretation. So, as an example, if you were to tell me you've just gone through a divorce or something, then that's potentially can colour how I interpret what is coming through on the card. So I'd rather not have any background knowledge and just see what comes through, what is conveyed in the image in the cards. And it's much in the same way as listening to music. I did come up with an analogy for this. Oh yes, I know what it was. You've probably heard the expression, "Oh, you've got beautiful eyes," or "You're absolutely shining. You're radiant. You look happy. You look sad." All these things. But when you look at the physical eye, if you were to take it away, take it in isolation from the skin around it and everything, they're basically all the same. They're just a sort of white ball with a coloured circle and then a black dot in the middle. So what is it if physically the eyes aren't really any different? What is it we're seeing? Because clearly there is something there, and you can pick up a lot when you look into another's eyes. You can pick things up about them when you make eye contact with another that will tell you sort of, "Oh, don't keep your distance. This person looks a bit crazy." It's like an intuitive language that's going on just from reading an energy that's in the eyes. So it's much the same principle with listening to music, where if you're to see the notes on the printed score, it's not the same as when you hear them. And then it's when you hear them, it's what you hear in feeling that comes out of it. This has ended up a bit longer, but I just wanted to share this. There will be more videos on this, talking more about this. But yeah, just try that experiment with the painting with your finger, that treble clef and the bass clef symbol. That in itself is an interesting exercise. And I ask you to try it, and does it feel like you're casting a spell with a wand by tracing out that shape? Obviously, if you go faster with the hand movement, once you've mastered drawing that shape in the air, I feel it is going to be very much like it's some sort of spell from a hand gesture that comes from that. I may be way off on that, but it's just a feeling. And that it looks so much like a Reiki hand symbol as well. So, right, we'll leave that there. Do share your thoughts in the comments, and I'm hoping that I can open this up on an Archaix Underground live presentation in a talk with Jason, and expand on this further, because this is definitely a topic that does need looking into. It's an untapped resource which I feel we're only just scratching the surface of. I feel there'll be lots of revelations that comes out of this over the next 5 years, maybe. I feel within 5 years we will have a better understanding of exactly what music is, the power that it holds in it, the sort of, shall we say, spellcasting ability that it has, the emotions that it it can emit from people. And of course, don't forget there's also the attachment aspect to this. Because often we hear a piece of music and then we associate it with a particular time or event. We sort of fix it to a time or event. So every time you hear that piece of music, that memory will come up. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's something to be aware of, that's for certain. Because music isn't fixed, really, it's very fluid. Earlier on, I was listening, just as a one final note, I was listening to, it's Beethoven's Ode to Joy. Played on, it sounded like electronic instruments or a computer, and how mechanical it sounds. It's only because of the way it's put together, but if you take the individual instruments and their little phrases that they play, they're often repeated and then shifted by maybe just a semitone. But then it's overlaid with all the other parts of the orchestra, so you get this fantastic sound, but it's encompassing so much more. And there's a lot of little repetitious bits where there'll be a statement and then a repeat of that statement. There is the whole aspect of muss es sein, es muss sein, must it be, it must be, which is basically what every piece of Beethoven's music revolves around, this question and answer thing. But also you'll hear it in that toccata and fugue. It's like an opening question. Then you've got the answer. It's question, answer, all the way through that toccata and fugue. Anyway, I've talked even longer now. I apologise for that, but I do find this whole topic absolutely fascinating, and I invite you to come on board and let's get our thinking caps on, as it were, and see what else comes out of this, because I'm going to bring a lot more to the table on this.